They say that when the silver goddess walks among mortals, the moon itself weeps with joy. I wouldn't know about that. But I do know that when I walked back through the gates of the Shadow Peak Kingdom 6 months after Alpha King Darius Nightstorm publicly rejected me and left me to die in the Forsaken Valley, the moon was full and bright, and every wolf in that cursed palace fell to their knees in terror. My name is Aria Moonwhisper, and this is the story of how I went from a rejected Luna, humiliated in front of thousands and cast out like garbage, to the living embodiment of divine vengeance, how I died in that cursed valley, and was reborn as something ancient, something powerful, something that made Alpha Kings tremble and kingdoms crumble. But most importantly, this is the story of how I returned to the palace, where Darius Nightstorm sat on his stolen throne, how I walked through walls he thought would protect him, and how I made the most powerful Alpha in the Northern Territories fall to his knees and beg for a mercy I had no intention of granting. By the time this hour is over, you'll understand why they now tell stories about me in hushed whispers, why mothers warn their Alpha sons about the price of cruelty, why the name Aria Moonwhisper has become synonymous with divine retribution. And you'll understand why, when an Alpha King begs for mercy, sometimes the only answer is the cold smile of a goddess who remembers exactly what it felt like to beg and be denied. Before we dive into this journey of transformation and righteous vengeance, I want to take a moment to thank you for being here with us at Alpha Destiny Tales. We're building an incredible community of people who believe in the power of rising from the ashes, and your support in helping us reach our first 1,000 subscribers would mean the world to us. Now, let me take you back to the night my world ended. The night I learned that love and loyalty mean nothing when an Alpha decides you're no longer useful. The rejection ceremony was supposed to be private. That's what Darius promised me 3 days before, when he'd called me to his study with that strange, cold look in his eyes that I'd never seen before. We'd been mated for 2 years, bonded under the full moon in a ceremony that was supposed to be eternal, unbreakable, sacred. I thought I knew him, thought I understood the man behind the crown, the Alpha who'd chosen me despite my lack of royal bloodline, despite the whispers that a common wolf wasn't suitable to be queen. I was wrong about everything. The ceremony took place in the Grand Hall, the same room where we'd been bonded, where he'd looked into my eyes and sworn before the moon goddess that I was his one true mate, his Luna, his queen. But this time, instead of intimate candlelight and the soft presence of the priestess, there were thousands of wolves packed into every available space, the entire court, the visiting Alphas from neighboring kingdoms, the merchants and warriors and servants, everyone who made up the social fabric of Shadow Peak. They'd all been summoned to witness my humiliation. I stood in the center of the hall in the white dress I'd worn for our bonding ceremony, the one I'd saved because it represented the happiest day of my life. Darius had specifically requested I wear it. I thought it was romantic, a callback to better times, a symbol that whatever was troubling him could be worked through. Instead, it was just another cruelty, making me stand there in the symbol of our love, while he systematically destroyed it in front of everyone who mattered. Darius sat on his throne, elevated above me, looking down with an expression of cold disgust that made my stomach turn. Beside him stood Seraphina Blackwood, daughter of the most powerful Alpha family in the North. She was beautiful in that effortless way that high-born wolves always seem to be, with golden hair that caught the light and amber eyes that sparkled with barely concealed triumph. Her hand rested possessively on the arm of his throne, and even from a distance, I could see the fresh mate mark on her neck. He'd already bonded with her, before the ceremony, before officially severing our connection. He'd taken another mate while ours still existed, which was not just forbidden but sacrilegious, an insult to the moon goddess herself. The priestess who'd bonded us stood to the side, her ancient face creased with disapproval, but she said nothing. Even the priestesses bowed to Alpha authority when that authority had enough power behind it. Darius rose from his throne, and the hall fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop in that massive space, thousands of wolves holding their breath, waiting to see how this would unfold. I searched his face for any hint of the man I'd loved, any shred of doubt or regret or humanity. There was nothing. His handsome features could have been carved from ice. Aria Moonwhisper, he began, his voice carrying easily through the hall with Alpha authority behind it. 2 years ago I made a mistake. In a moment of weakness, I allowed myself to bond with a wolf beneath my station, beneath the requirements of my throne. I convinced myself that love could overcome the limitations of common blood, that perhaps the moon goddess knew something I didn't in pairing us together. Each word landed like a physical blow. I felt my wolf whimpering inside me, confused and hurt by the rejection emanating from our mate. The bond between us was still active, still trying to pull us together, even as Darius used it as a weapon against me. I was wrong, he continued, his eyes finally meeting mine, and the coldness in them made me shiver, despite the warmth of the crowded hall. The kingdom needs a queen, who can strengthen our bloodlines, who can form alliances with other royal houses, who can produce heirs worthy of wearing the Nightstorm crown. You have given me none of these things. Worse, your presence weakens me in the eyes of the other alphas, makes them question my judgment and strength. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, evaluating, finding me wanting just as Darius had. The few friends I'd thought I had in the court looked away, unwilling to meet my gaze, unwilling to show even a moment of sympathy that might align them with the losing side. But beyond your failings as a Luna, Darius said, his voice growing harder, you have committed the ultimate betrayal. You have been unfaithful. The accusation hit me like ice water. What? No, I never. Silence. His alpha command crashed over me like a physical force, and my mouth snapped shut against my will, my body responding to his authority, even as my mind screamed in protest. You will not speak unless given permission. You have lost that right. He gestured, and 2 guards dragged forward a young male wolf I vaguely recognized from the palace staff. His face was bruised, and he looked terrified, his eyes darting between Darius and me. Tell them what you told me, Darius commanded the young wolf. Tell them about your affair with my Luna. I don't, the young wolf stammered, but another pulse of alpha command had him talking, words tumbling out that I could tell weren't his own, that had been fed to him, or beaten into him, or both. I've been meeting with Luna Aria in secret for months. We've been lovers. She told me she never loved the Alpha King, that she only married him for power. That's not true, I managed to force out, fighting through the compulsion. I've never even spoken to this wolf before. Darius, please, you know me. You know I would never. I know you're a liar, he said flatly. I know you've been playing me for a fool while conducting your sordid affairs. Multiple witnesses have come forward. The evidence is overwhelming. There was no evidence because it had never happened, but looking at the faces around me, I could see they believed it, wanted to believe it. It was easier to think I was a cheating commoner than to acknowledge that their powerful Alpha King was simply cruel enough to fabricate charges against an inconvenient mate. Therefore, Darius announced, his voice ringing with finality, I, Alpha King Darius Nightstorm, do hereby reject you, Aria Moonwhisper, as my mate and Luna. I sever our bond before the moon goddess and this assembly. You are no longer my queen. You are no longer part of this pack. You are nothing. The pain started immediately. Rejection pain was supposed to be the worst agony a wolf could experience, like having your soul torn in half while you were still conscious and aware. But this was worse because it was public, because I could feel the judgment and glee of thousands of wolves watching me suffer, because Darius wasn't even trying to hide his satisfaction as I fell to my knees, clutching my chest where the bond was ripping apart. I screamed. Couldn't help it. The sound was raw and animal, echoing off the high ceilings of the grand hall. My wolf was howling inside me, a sound of such pure anguish that it seemed to shake the very foundations of the palace. The mate bond, that golden thread that had connected us for 2 years, was being severed piece by piece, and each break felt like dying. Through the pain, I heard Darius speaking again. As punishment for your infidelity and betrayal of the crown, you are hereby exiled from Shadow Peak territory. You will be taken to the Forsaken Valley and left there. If you somehow survive, you are forbidden from ever returning to any lands under Nightstorm rule. The penalty for violating this exile is death, the Forsaken Valley. Even through the agony, I understood what that meant. It was a place where magic had gone wrong centuries ago, where reality itself was twisted and broken. Nothing grew there, nothing lived there. It was where the kingdom sent traitors and murderers, wolves who deserved a death too cruel for execution. He was going to kill me, just in a way that kept his hands clean. Darius, please, I begged, shame burning through me even as I groveled. Please don't do this. I love you. I've been faithful. Whatever you think happened, it's not true. Please. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or guilt. But then Serafina leaned down and whispered something in his ear, and his face hardened again. "Take her away," he ordered. "I don't want to see her face again." The guards grabbed me, hauled me to my feet, even though I could barely stand. The rejection pain was still tearing through me, waves of agony that made it hard to breathe, hard to think. As they dragged me toward the massive doors, I looked back one last time at the man I'd loved, at the Alpha who'd sworn to protect me, at my mate who was watching me being destroyed with cold, distant eyes. Our gazes met, and I saw it then, the truth hiding beneath the cruelty. He'd never loved me, never truly bonded with me in his heart. I'd been convenient, a warm body to fill the Luna role while he positioned himself for something better. And when Serafina Blackwood made it clear that an alliance with her family could expand his kingdom, could make him the most powerful Alpha in the North, I'd become an obstacle to be removed. The elaborate charges, the fake witness, the public humiliation, it was all theater. A show to justify what he'd already decided to do, and I'd been too blind, too in love, too desperate to believe in the fairness of the mate bond to see it coming. The doors slammed shut behind me, cutting off the sight of the grand hall, cutting off the life I'd known. The guards were rough as they dragged me through the palace. Downstairs I'd descended 1,000 times as Luna, past rooms where I'd laughed and loved and lived, past servants who looked away rather than acknowledge the fallen queen. They threw me into a carriage with barred windows, something used to transport criminals. The rejection pain had faded to a dull, constant ache, but it was replaced by a different kind of agony, the knowledge that everything I'd believed was a lie, that the man I'd trusted with my heart had been planning this betrayal for who knows how long, that I'd been nothing more than a placeholder, a temporary convenience easily discarded. The journey to the Forsaken Valley took 3 hours, 3 hours of rattling through darkness, of trying not to think about what awaited me, of feeling my wolf growing quieter and more distant as the reality of our situation sank in. She'd always been my strength, my companion, the voice in my head that reassured me everything would be okay, but even she had no comfort to offer now. When the carriage finally stopped, and they dragged me out, I saw why the Forsaken Valley had earned its name. The land was gray and dead, covered in ash that swirled in constant winds that came from nowhere. The sky above was wrong, a sickly purple color that hurt to look at. In the distance, I could see twisted spires of rock that seemed to defy physics, leaning at impossible angles without falling. "This is as far as we go," one of the guards said, not unkindly. He'd been at the palace for years, had been polite to me when I was Luna. "I'm sorry, my lady, but orders are orders." They removed my chains, and I stood there in my white bonding dress, now torn and filthy, staring at the wasteland before me. Behind me was the road back to civilization, to life. Ahead was only death, slow and terrible. "Can you at least tell me why?" I asked quietly. "Tell me the real reason. I know the charges were false. I know he made them up. But why? What did I do that was so terrible he had to destroy me?" The guard hesitated, then sighed. The Blackwood family offered him a treaty. Unite their territories, create the largest kingdom in the north, but Lady Serafina's father demanded that Darius be unmated when the union happened. Said his daughter wouldn't be second choice or a concubine, so Darius had to get rid of you first. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "For what it's worth, I think you were a good Luna. Kind, fair. You didn't deserve this." Then they were gone, the carriage disappearing down the road, leaving me alone in the Forsaken Valley with nothing but the clothes on my back and the broken remains of my mate bond throbbing in my chest. I walked forward, because there was nowhere else to go. The ash was thick beneath my feet, muffling all sound except the constant wind. The wrongness of the place pressed against my mind, trying to break through my sanity, whispers in languages I didn't know promising things I couldn't understand. My wolf had gone completely silent. The rejection combined with this cursed place had sent her so deep inside my consciousness that I couldn't feel her anymore. I was alone, truly, completely alone for the first time in my life. I walked for hours, or maybe days. Time moved strangely in the Forsaken Valley, stretching and contracting, making it impossible to track. I was dying. I knew that, could feel my body slowly shutting down, my wolf's absence making me more human than wolf, and humans couldn't survive in places like this. The thirst was worst. My throat felt like broken glass, my tongue swollen and useless. There was no water in this dead place, nothing to drink except ash and despair. When I finally collapsed, falling to my knees in the gray dust, I actually felt relief. It would be over soon. The pain, the humiliation, the betrayal. Death would take me, and maybe I'd find peace in whatever came after. But then I saw it. In the distance, barely visible through the swirling ash. A light, not the sickly purple of the twisted sky, but silver, pure, clean. It called to me, not with words, but with a feeling that bypassed my conscious mind and spoke directly to something ancient in my blood. I started crawling toward it. Didn't have the strength to walk, but I could crawl, could drag myself inch by inch through the ash, following that silver light like a moth drawn to flame. It seemed to take forever, but eventually I reached the source, a pool of liquid silver, perfectly still despite the constant wind, reflecting the corrupted sky like a mirror. And in that reflection, I saw not myself, but someone else, something else. A woman made of moonlight stood in the reflection, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Her eyes were ancient, holding the weight of millennia. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and on her head sat a crown of stars that burned with cold fire. "Daughter," she said, and her voice resonated through the pool, through the ground, through my very bones. "You have suffered greatly, been betrayed by one who should have cherished you, been cast aside like your pain meant nothing." I tried to speak, but couldn't make my voice work. She smiled, sad and knowing. "I am what remains of the Silver Goddess, the ancient power that your kind has forgotten. Once I walked among the wolves, teaching them honor, loyalty, truth, but the Alphas grew proud. They twisted my teachings into hierarchy and dominance. They forgot that strength without mercy is just cruelty wearing a crown." The goddess leaned closer until her face filled the entire pool. "I cannot save you from death, child. Your body has gone too far, but I can offer you a choice. Die here, and I will carry your soul to peace. You've earned rest. No one would blame you for accepting it." She paused, and power crackled in the air around the pool. "Or drink from my essence. Take my power into yourself, and be reborn as my vessel. Return to the world as a living goddess. Make those who wronged you understand the price of their cruelty. Tear down the corrupt systems that let wolves like Darius Nightstorm thrive." Her eyes blazed with silver fire. "But know this, if you drink, if you accept my power, you will change. The gentle Luna who wanted nothing but love and family will burn away. You will become something harder, something that doesn't forgive easily, something that makes Alpha Kings kneel and beg for mercy they don't deserve." I thought about Darius, about his cold eyes as he destroyed me, about Seraphina's smug smile as she stood beside my throne, about the thousands of wolves who'd watched me suffer and done nothing, about the guard who'd pitied me but still followed his orders because orders were orders. "I don't want to be gentle anymore," I whispered, finding my voice at last. "I want to be strong. I want them to feel what I felt. I want to watch Darius Nightstorm, Alpha King, fall to his knees and beg me for a mercy I won't give." The goddess smiled, and it was fierce and proud. "Then drink, daughter. Drink deep, and be transformed." I plunged my hands into the pool. The liquid silver was cold, so cold it burned, but I scooped it up and brought it to my cracked, bleeding lips anyway. The moment it touched my tongue, power exploded through my body like lightning striking a tree. I screamed, but the sound came out as silver light. My back arched as every cell ignited with transformation. I could feel myself dying, feel Arya Moonwhisper, rejected Luna, burning away like paper in a fire. And in her place, something new was being forged, something ancient awakening after sleeping in my bloodline for generations. My wolf returned, but she was different, massive. Her fur wasn't the soft brown it had been, but silver shot through with veins of pure moonlight. When she howled inside my mind, the sound shook the Forsaken Valley, making the twisted spires of rock tremble. The goddess's memories flooded into me. I saw the ancient times when wolves and gods walked together, saw the wars, the betrayals, the slow corruption of honor into tyranny, saw how the Alphas had locked away the goddess's power because they feared what she represented: freedom, justice, accountability. And now that power was mine. When I finally pulled my hands from the pool, my entire body had transformed. The wounds and suffering were gone, healed completely. My skin glowed with inner light. My hair had turned silver from root to tip, and when I looked down at my reflection in the pool, I saw eyes that blazed with divine fire. eyes that held the accumulated rage of 1,000 wronged wolves, eyes that promised vengeance. I stood, and the forsaken valley bent around me. The ash parted where I walked. The twisted spires of rock straightened themselves as if in respect. Even this cursed place recognized power when it saw it. The goddess's voice whispered in my mind one last time. "Go, my vessel. Return to the world of wolves and alphas. Show them what happens when they mistake gentleness for weakness. Teach them that the silver goddess never forgets. And when that pathetic king falls to his knees before you, remember every moment he made you beg." I turned toward Shadow Peak, toward the palace where Darius sat on his throne, believing he'd gotten away with his cruelty. Toward the kingdom that had watched me burn and done nothing. 6 months, I decided. I would give them 6 months to feel safe, to believe I was truly gone, to grow comfortable in their corruption, and then I would return. Not as Arya Moonwhisper, rejected Luna, but as something far worse, as the silver goddess come to collect what was owed. I spent those 6 months in the Whispering Woods, a wild territory claimed by no alpha, where magic ran free and wolves who rejected the pack hierarchy lived as rogues and outcasts. The transformation the goddess had given me was complete physically, but I needed to learn to wield the power now thrumming through my veins. Raw divine strength without control was just chaos, and I wanted to be surgical in my vengeance. Precise, devastating. The rogues found me first, drawn by the silver light that emanated from my presence even when I tried to suppress it. They came cautiously, expecting another alpha trying to claim their territory, another authority figure demanding submission. Instead, they found me sitting by a stream, practicing calling water from the earth and shaping it into floating spheres of liquid crystal. The leader of the local rogue pack was a scarred female named Kira, who'd been exiled from Shadow Peak 5 years earlier for refusing to mate with the male her alpha had chosen for her. She approached with her teeth bared, ready to defend her territory, but when she got close enough to see my eyes, she stumbled backward with a gasp. "You're the Luna," she whispered. "Arya Moonwhisper. But you're supposed to be dead. The king said you died in the Forsaken Valley." I smiled and saw her shiver at the expression. My smiles weren't kind anymore. Arya Moonwhisper did die in that cursed place. What returned is something else, something older, something that's going to make Darius Nightstorm regret the day he was born. Word spread quickly through the rogue networks. The rejected Luna had returned as something divine, something powerful. Wolves began seeking me out, rogues and exiles who'd suffered under alpha cruelty, who'd been cast out for refusing to bow, for speaking truth to power, for simply being inconvenient. I offered them the same thing the goddess had offered me, a choice. They could remain as they were, surviving on the edges of pack territories, or they could drink from my power and become something more, not bound to me by pack bonds or alpha authority, but connected by choice and shared purpose. Most chose transformation. I blessed water from the stream with my power, watched it turn silver and luminous, and let them drink. They changed, not as dramatically as I had, but enough. Their eyes gained a silver sheen. Their wolves grew stronger. They healed from old injuries and gained abilities that went beyond normal wolf capabilities. Kira was the first to drink, and as the power settled into her, she fell to her knees with tears streaming down her face. "I can feel it," she gasped. "For the first time since my exile, I feel whole, connected to something greater than survival. Thank you, my goddess." "I'm not your goddess," I corrected gently but firmly. "I'm a vessel for her power, and I'm offering you a share of that power to right the wrongs that have been done to us all. But you remain yourself. You keep your free will. No pack bonds, no forced submission, just wolves choosing to stand together against tyranny." By the end of the first month, I had over 200 wolves who'd taken my offer. By the 3rd month, word had spread to other territories, and exiles from kingdoms across the north were making pilgrimages to the Whispering Woods to see if the rumors were true. But I wasn't just building an army. I was learning. The goddess's memories gave me knowledge of ancient magic, but knowledge wasn't the same as skill. I needed to practice, to understand the limits and capabilities of what I'd become. I could sense emotions now, feel the fear and hope and desperation of everyone around me like a physical touch. I could manipulate silver, calling it from the earth, shaping it into weapons or shields or chains that couldn't be broken by physical force. I could move through shadows, appearing and disappearing at will. And most importantly, I could see bonds now, the magical connections that tied wolves together in packs, in mate pairs, in the whole elaborate hierarchy that alphas use to control others. And I could break those bonds, not just pack bonds, but mate bonds too. The sacred connection that was supposed to be eternal could be severed with the touch of my power. It was the ultimate violation of alpha authority, the ability to free wolves from compulsory loyalty. I practiced on volunteers first, rogues who'd been forcibly bonded to mates they didn't choose, wolves whose alpha had used command to override their will. Each time I broke one of those chains, I felt my power grow stronger, fed by the freedom I was granting. But I also practiced combat. The goddess's power made me strong, but strength alone wouldn't be enough against a kingdom full of trained warriors. I needed technique, strategy, the kind of skills that turned raw power into unstoppable force. Kira, it turned out, had been a warrior instructor before her exile. She spent hours drilling me in combat forms, teaching me how to use my enhanced speed and strength effectively, how to anticipate attacks and turn enemy momentum against them. We sparred daily, and at first she held back out of respect or fear. But after I insisted she treat me like any other student, she stopped pulling her punches, and I learned quickly through bruises and occasional blood. I also learned about Darius's kingdom in those months, gathering intelligence from rogues who still had contacts inside Shadow Peak territory. What I learned made my rage burn colder and more focused. Darius had indeed married Seraphina Blackwood in a grand ceremony 2 weeks after my exile. Their territories had merged, creating the largest kingdom in the northern region. He now commanded the loyalty of over 10,000 wolves, had an army of 1,000 trained warriors, and sat in a palace that was the envy of every alpha. But there were cracks in his perfect kingdom. The forced merger had created resentment. Many of Seraphina's father's wolves didn't want to bow to a king they saw as an outsider. Darius's own wolves whispered about the cruelty of my rejection, about the obviously fabricated charges, about how their alpha had violated sacred mate bond laws for political gain, and Seraphina herself was causing problems. She was arrogant, cruel to servants, and demanded luxuries that strained even a wealthy kingdom's resources. Worse, she wasn't pregnant yet, and as the months passed without an heir, whispers were starting. Was the great union blessed by the moon goddess? Or was it built on sacrilege and doomed to failure? I smiled when I heard that. The goddess worked in mysterious ways, and apparently even divine power could inflict appropriate irony. But the most useful intelligence came from an unexpected source. One of the palace healers, an elderly woman named Meredith who'd been kind to me during my time as Luna, sent word through a complicated chain of contacts that she wanted to meet with me. We met in a neutral clearing, Meredith escorted by 2 of my wolves to ensure safety. She was frailer than I remembered, her hair completely white now, her hands shaking with age, but her eyes were sharp and knowing. "My lady," she said, bowing deeply. "Or should I say my goddess? The rumors don't do you justice. You're magnificent." "I'm no one's lady anymore," I replied, though not unkindly. "And I'm not a goddess, just her vessel." "Why did you want to see me, Meredith?" She straightened, and I saw steel in that old spine. "Because what Darius did to you was wrong, evil, and I've been at that palace long enough to see the rot at its core. I want to help you tear it down." I studied her carefully, reading her emotions, searching for deception. There was none, just determination and a deep, abiding rage that matched my own. "What can you offer me?" She smiled grimly. "Knowledge. The palace layout, guard rotations, the locations of the weapon stores and the treasury. But more importantly, I can tell you about Darius's weaknesses, the cracks in his armor that you can exploit." We talked for hours. Meredith laid out the palace's defenses in meticulous detail, identifying weak points that could be exploited, suggesting strategies for maximum impact with minimum casualties. I didn't want to kill indiscriminately. Many of the wolves serving Darius were just following orders. Trapped by pack bonds they couldn't break on their own. They deserved the same freedom I was offering my volunteers. But more valuable than tactical information was what Meredith told me about Darius's state of mind. "He's terrified," she said bluntly. "Puts on a good show in public, plays the strong king, but I've been mixing his sleeping drafts for months now, and the doses keep increasing. He has nightmares about you. About you returning. About divine retribution. Seraphina mocks him for it, but I've seen real fear in his eyes." "Good," I said coldly. "He should be afraid. He should lie awake at night wondering when I'll come for him." "There's more," Meredith continued. The mate bond between him and Seraphina is wrong somehow, forced. I think he used dark magic to forge it, to bypass the normal bonding process. It's causing him pain, physical deterioration. He tries to hide it, but I'm a healer. I can see the signs. That was interesting. Bond magic was tricky, dangerous to manipulate. If Darius had used forbidden techniques to create an artificial mate bond with Seraphina, it would explain why she wasn't pregnant yet. The moon goddess didn't bless unions built on sacrilege. "Can you get me inside the palace?" I asked. "When the time comes, will you help me breach the inner defenses?" Meredith nodded without hesitation. "I have keys to passages even Darius doesn't know about. Ancient tunnels from when the palace was first built. I can get you directly into the royal wing, right to his bedchamber if you want." "I do want that," I said, my power flaring with anticipation. When I face him, it should be in the most private, vulnerable space he has, where he can't hide behind his crown or his warriors, just him and me and the accounting he owes. We made our plans over the following weeks. Meredith would continue feeding me intelligence, updating me on guard rotations and the king's schedule. When I was ready, she would unlock the ancient passages and guide my strike team into the palace's heart. But before I could act against Darius, I needed to deal with something else. His outer territories, the villages and towns that fed resources into his kingdom. I couldn't assault the palace while his supply lines remained intact, while he had unlimited reinforcements to call upon. So we began a campaign of liberation. My wolves, now trained and enhanced with divine power, struck at the outer settlements, not to conquer, but to free. We would arrive at a village, defeat the local garrison, and then I would walk among the common wolves and break their pack bonds. The first time I did it, at a mining town called Iron Ridge, the reaction was almost religious. I walked through the main square, my power visible as a silver aura, touching each wolf and severing the magical chains that bound them to Darius's authority. When they realized they were free, truly free to choose their own loyalty, many wept openly. "You're no longer slaves to pack hierarchy," I told them, my voice carrying to every corner of the square. "You're no longer forced to obey orders that violate your conscience. Choose your own path. Stay here and build something better, leave and find new territories, or join me in tearing down the corrupt system that enslaved you. The choice is yours." About half joined me immediately. The others were too scared or too conditioned to Alpha's authority to accept freedom so suddenly. But none tried to stop us. None sent word to warn Darius. The taste of liberation was too sweet to betray. We hit 6 more villages over the next month. Each time the pattern repeated. Brief resistance from the garrison, followed by mass liberation, followed by recruitment of those brave enough to fight for lasting change. By the end of the 5th month, I commanded an army of 800 wolves, all freed from pack bonds, all enhanced with borrowed divine power, all absolutely devoted to the cause of ending Alpha tyranny. Darius's kingdom was shrinking, his resources were dwindling, his outer defenses were gone. And according to Meredith's reports, he was becoming increasingly paranoid, seeing threats everywhere, trusting no one. It was almost time. On the last night of the 6th month, I stood at the edge of the Whispering Woods, looking toward Shadow Peak in the distance. I could see the palace on its hill, could see the lights in the windows, could almost feel Darius's fear emanating from that place like smoke from a fire. "Tomorrow," I said to Kira, who stood beside me. "Tomorrow we march. Tomorrow we end this." She grinned fiercely. "And the king?" I smiled, cold and sharp as winter ice. "Tomorrow, the king learns what it means to beg for mercy from a goddess he tried to destroy." The moon rose full and bright above us, and I swear I felt the goddess's approval wrapping around me like a cloak. Tomorrow, divine justice would be served. Tomorrow, Darius Nightstorm would fall. We moved on Shadow Peak at midnight, 800 wolves flowing through the darkness like a silver river. I'd split our forces into 3 groups. Kira led half the army in a frontal assault on the main gates, a deliberate distraction to draw Darius's warriors away from the palace itself. Another group of 200, led by a former beta named Marcus, who joined us after I freed his entire pack, struck at the barracks from the east, and I took the remaining 100, the strongest and most skilled, through Meredith's secret passages directly into the palace's heart. The passage entrance was hidden in a collapsed section of the old city wall, concealed behind centuries of vines and forgotten by everyone except the elderly healer. Meredith met us there personally, her frail form wrapped in a dark cloak, her eyes bright with determination despite her age. "The passage will take you to 3 different locations," she explained, handing me a roughly drawn map. The kitchens, the throne room, or the royal bedchamber. I recommend the bedchamber. He's there now, probably already asleep with the draft I slipped into his wine at dinner. Won't Seraphina be with him? One of my wolves asked. Meredith shook her head. She sleeps in her own chambers now. The false mate bond causes him pain when they're in close proximity for too long. She claims she can't stand his nightmares disturbing her rest. Perfect. Even better than I'd hoped. Darius would be alone, vulnerable, with no one to witness his humiliation but us. What about guards? I asked. 2 at the bedchamber door. Elite warriors, loyal to him personally, but I've made sure they're the ones who drank from the wine I also drugged. They'll be slow, sluggish. Your wolves should be able to handle them quietly. I looked at my strike team, saw the determination in their silver-touched eyes, felt their eagerness through the connection we shared. They were ready. We were all ready. Thank you, Meredith, I said sincerely. When this is over, you'll have a place of honor in whatever we build from the ashes. She smiled sadly. I don't need honor, child. I just want to see justice done before I die. Now go. End his reign of cruelty. The passage was tight and dark, forcing us to move in single file. The walls were ancient stone, damp with moisture, covered in moss that glowed faintly with residual magic. We moved in complete silence, my enhanced senses guiding us through turns and intersections, following the path Meredith had described. Behind us, I could hear the sounds of battle beginning, Kira's assault on the main gates, the clash of steel, and the roars of fighting wolves. Darius's warriors would be rushing to respond, pulling defenders away from the palace interior. Everything was going according to plan. The passage eventually opened into a storage room filled with ancient furniture and forgotten treasures. We emerged carefully, checking for threats, but the room was empty, and the door beyond unlocked. Beyond that was a servants' corridor, and beyond that, the royal wing. We encountered the first guards in that corridor, 2 warriors who were indeed moving slowly, their reactions dulled by Meredith's drugs. My wolves subdued them in seconds, knocking them unconscious and binding them before they could raise an alarm. We left them breathing but helpless, bound with silver chains I conjured that would hold them until we were done. The royal bedchamber was at the end of a long hallway, behind doors of carved oak that probably cost more than most wolves earned in a lifetime. 2 more guards stood before it, and these ones were more alert despite the drugged wine. They saw us coming and immediately drew their weapons. "Intruders!" one shouted. "Protect the king!" They died fighting, which was more mercy than Darius had shown me. My wolves moved like liquid shadow, their enhanced speed and strength overwhelming the guards before they could make more noise. It was over in seconds, brutal and efficient. I stood before the bedchamber doors, my power building, silver light beginning to emanate from my skin. This was the moment. Behind these doors was the man who'd destroyed me, who'd fabricated charges and humiliated me publicly, who'd cast me out to die in the Forsaken Valley. Behind these doors was my vengeance. I didn't knock, didn't announce myself. I simply reached out with my power, and the doors exploded inward, torn from their hinges by invisible force. The sound was like thunder in the quiet palace, echoing through the royal wing. The bedchamber was obscenely opulent, all gold and silk and luxury purchased with the suffering of common wolves. And in the massive bed at the room's center, Darius Nightstorm, Alpha King, was sitting up in shock, his eyes wide, his mouth open. He saw me and all the color drained from his face. "Hello, husband," I said, and my voice resonated with divine power, echoing as if 2 beings spoke in harmony. "Did you miss me?" For a long moment, he just stared, unable to process what he was seeing. "Arya? But you're dead. You can't be here. This is a dream, a nightmare." "Oh, it's a nightmare," I agreed, walking slowly into the room, my wolves fanning out behind me. "But it's very real, and it's only just beginning." He scrambled out of bed, and I saw that Meredith had been right about his deterioration. Darius had always been powerful, muscular, radiating strength and vitality, but the man standing before me now was gaunt, his skin pale, dark circles under his eyes. The false mate bond with Seraphina was literally eating him alive. "How?" he demanded, trying to summon his alpha authority, but his voice shook. "The Forsaken Valley kills everything. Nothing survives that place." "You're right," I said, continuing my slow advance. Arya Moonwhisper died in that cursed wasteland, died slowly and painfully while begging for a mercy you never granted. But something else was born from her death, something ancient, Something that makes Alpha Kings look like children playing at power. I let my full transformation show. Silver light blazing from every pore. My hair rising on an invisible wind. My eyes burning with accumulated divine rage. The entire room seemed to pulse with power. Paintings falling from walls. Furniture cracking under the pressure. I am the Silver Goddess's vessel, I announced. I am divine retribution given form. I am what happens when you mistake gentleness for weakness and cruelty for strength. Darius tried to shift, tried to call his wolf, but I reached out with my power and simply stopped him, locked his transformation down, forced him to remain human and vulnerable. You don't get to hide behind your wolf, I said coldly. You don't get to meet me as an equal. You're going to face me as you made me face you. Powerless, helpless, alone. He backed away until he hit the wall, trapped, and I saw real terror in his eyes now. Please, he whispered. Please, Arya. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I should never have done what I did. Just please don't kill me. And there it was. The moment I'd been building toward for 6 months. The mighty Alpha King. The man who'd held ultimate authority. Who'd judged me and found me wanting. Was begging. Pleading. Reduced to the same pathetic state he'd forced me into. You're sorry? I said, my voice deadly soft. You're sorry now that I have the power to destroy you. But were you sorry when you dragged me before thousands and accused me of infidelity? Were you sorry when you had that terrified young wolf lie about sleeping with me? Were you sorry when you cast me into the Forsaken Valley to die slowly in agony? Each question was punctuated by a pulse of power that made him flinch. No, you weren't sorry then. You were satisfied. Pleased with yourself for removing an inconvenient obstacle to your ambitions. You thought you'd gotten away with it. Thought you'd traded a common Luna for a powerful alliance and no one would dare question you. I stood directly before him now, close enough to touch, and I saw him trembling. But here's what you never understood, Darius. The Moon Goddess doesn't forget. She doesn't forgive wolves who violate the sacred mate bond for political gain, and she certainly doesn't let them go unpunished. The goddess, he gasped. The stories about you, they're all true. You really are her vessel. Every word, I confirmed. Now get on your knees. What? Get on your knees. I infused the command with divine authority, power that went beyond alpha compulsion, that spoke to something primal in every wolf's soul. His legs folded beneath him against his will, forcing him down until he knelt before me, head bowed, exactly as I'd been forced to kneel in the grand hall. Good, I said. Now beg. Beg for mercy the way I begged you. Mean it the way I meant it. Feel the desperation and terror I felt when I pleaded for my life. Please, he sobbed, and there were actual tears streaming down his face. Please, Arya, I'll do anything. I'll step down from the throne. I'll exile myself. I'll give you everything. Just spare my life. Anything? I mused. That's a dangerous promise, Darius. Let me tell you what I want. I circled him slowly, enjoying the way he flinched at each footstep. I want you to issue a royal decree, admitting that you fabricated the charges against me. I want you to confess to the entire kingdom that you violated mate bond laws by taking Seraphina as a mate before properly severing our bond. I want you to acknowledge that everything you accused me of was a lie designed to justify your cruelty. His head snapped up. That would destroy my authority. The other alphas would turn on me. Some would probably try to kill me. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what would happen. Just as your lies destroyed my reputation and your rejection nearly killed me. Turnabout is fair play, don't you think? You said you wanted me to beg, he said desperately. I've begged. I'm begging now. Isn't that enough? I grabbed his throat, lifted him with one hand until his feet left the ground. He clawed at my fingers uselessly, unable to break my grip. When you threw me into the Forsaken Valley, I said, my voice cold as winter ice, when I begged you not to kill me, do you remember what you said? He couldn't speak, so I loosened my grip just enough. You said I was nothing. That's right. And do you know what? You were wrong. I wasn't nothing. I was something precious that you threw away out of greed and ambition. But you, Darius Nightstorm, right now, in this moment, you are nothing. A pathetic excuse for an alpha, a coward who built his kingdom on lies and cruelty, a fool who thought he could violate divine law without consequences. I released him, let him fall gasping to the floor. But unlike you, I'm not a murderer. I won't kill you. Death would be mercy, and you gave me none. I called Silverlight to my hand, shaped it into chains that wrapped around his wrists and ankles. Instead, you're going to live. You're going to issue that decree. You're going to confess your crimes. You're going to watch everything you built come crashing down around you. The chains tightened, and he screamed as they burned into his skin, leaving permanent marks. These chains are bound to your very soul. You can't remove them. They'll remind you, every second of every day for the rest of your life, that you tried to destroy Eluna and created a goddess instead. I turned to my wolves. Take him to the throne room. Gather everyone in the palace. Servants, guards, nobles, everyone. I want an audience for his confession. As they dragged him away, still sobbing and begging, I felt no satisfaction, no joy, just cold, empty completion. This was justice, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. The goddess's voice whispered in my mind. You expected vengeance to feel better than this, didn't you? Yes, I admitted silently. I thought making him suffer would heal my pain. Pain doesn't heal through inflicting more pain, she said gently. It heals through building something better from the ruins. You've torn down his kingdom. Now comes the hard part, creating something worth protecting from wolves like him. She was right. Revenge was just the beginning. The real work, the lasting work, would be reformation, taking this corrupt system and transforming it into something fair and just. But first, I had one more task to complete. Seraphina Blackwood, who'd knowingly taken a throne built on my suffering, needed to understand the price of her choices. I found Seraphina in her chambers, surrounded by luxury that would have fed a small village for a year. She was awake despite the late hour, pacing before the windows that overlooked the palace grounds. From this height, she could see the battle still raging at the main gates, could see my wolves overwhelming Darius's defenses. She spun when I entered, and for a moment, shock froze her beautiful features. Then her lip curled in disgust. You, she hissed. The little nobody Luna. I should have known Darius didn't finish the job properly. Men are always too soft when it comes to killing their former pets. I smiled, and saw her take an involuntary step backward. Hello, Seraphina. I've been looking forward to this conversation. She straightened, trying to summon the arrogant confidence that had always been her armor. You think you've won because you stormed the palace? You're nothing but a rogue with delusions of grandeur leading a pack of other worthless exiles. Darius will crush you, and when he does, I'll personally ensure your death is slow and painful. Darius is currently chained in the throne room, I said conversationally, preparing to confess his crimes to the entire court. Your marriage, it turns out, was built on sacrilege and dark magic. The moon goddess doesn't bless unions formed through forced mate bonds and murdered lunas. The color drained from her face. You're lying. Am I? I walked closer, let my power flare so she could see the silver light dancing across my skin. Tell me, Seraphina, did you ever wonder why you couldn't get pregnant? Why, despite months of trying, the great heir you were supposed to provide never materialized? Her hand went unconsciously to her stomach, and I saw the truth in her eyes. She had wondered, had worried, had probably been subject to the same pressure and judgment I'd faced. It's because your bond with Darius is artificial, I continued. He used forbidden magic to forge a connection with you while our true mate bond still existed. The moon goddess considers that an abomination. She'll never bless your union with children. You traded your chance at a real mate, at genuine love and family, for a crown built on lies. I didn't know, she whispered, and for the first time, I heard something other than arrogance in her voice, fear, uncertainty. The realization that she'd been used as much as I had. Didn't you? I challenged. You knew he'd only just gotten rid of his previous Luna. You knew the timing was suspicious, but you didn't ask questions because you wanted the power, wanted the status, wanted to be queen. You thought if you just ignored the ugliness of how you got the throne, it wouldn't matter. I could see tears forming in her eyes now, her mask cracking. My father, he demanded I accept Darius's suit, said it was my duty to the family. I tried to refuse, but he used alpha command to force my compliance. I never wanted to hurt you. I never even wanted to be Luna. And just like that, my rage toward her began to shift. She wasn't my enemy. She was another victim of the same system that had destroyed me, just packaged differently. Where I'd been discarded for being common, she'd been sold for being valuable. Both of us had been treated like property by alphas who cared only for power. Your father forced you, I asked, reading her emotions, sensing truth beneath the words. She nodded miserably. I wanted to mate with someone from my own pack, a warrior I'd loved since we were children. But Father said he was beneath my station, that I had to aim higher. When Darius made his offer, Father accepted without even asking me, used command to make me agree, to make me seem willing. I felt the goddess's power shift inside me, focusing, and suddenly I could see it. The bond between Seraphina and her father, thick and twisted with compulsion, years of alpha command layered on top of each other, until she barely knew her own mind anymore. "Would you like to be free?" I asked quietly. She looked up sharply. "What? Free from your father's control, free from the false bond with Darius, free to choose your own path for the first time in your life." I extended my hand. "I can break the chains binding you, give you back the agency that was stolen. But I need to know that's what you want." For a long moment, she just stared at my offered hand. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. Silver light flowed between us. I felt the bonds, both the artificial mate bond with Darius and the layers of alpha command from her father, and I simply unmade them, severed every chain with divine authority that superseded even the strongest alpha compulsion. Seraphina gasped, her legs giving out, and I caught her before she fell. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face, but there was also something else in her expression. Wonder, relief, the look of someone who'd been carrying an impossible weight and suddenly found it gone. "I can think," she whispered. "My own thoughts. Not what Father commanded me to think. Not what Darius expected. Just mine. That's what freedom feels like," I said. "And it's your right. No alpha, no matter how powerful, should be able to take that from you." She pulled away, standing on her own, and I saw steel entering her spine as she processed what had just happened. "You freed me. Why?" "I took your place as Luna. I benefited from your suffering. Because you were as much a victim as I was," I replied. "And because the cycle of pain has to stop somewhere. I could punish you for what was done to me, but that wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't fix the system that allowed both our suffering." I walked to her window, looked out at the palace grounds where my wolves were now in complete control. The old way, the way of alphas forcing submission and treating wolves as property, it ends tonight. I'm going to tear down every structure built on compulsion and cruelty, but I can't do it alone. I need wolves who understand what that cruelty costs, who've felt the weight of chains and know why they must be broken. I turned back to her. "So I'm offering you the same choice I've offered hundreds of others. You can leave, take your freedom and build a life wherever you choose. Or you can stay and help me create something better from these ruins. A kingdom where no alpha can force their child into an unwanted bond, where mates are chosen, not assigned, where power comes from earned loyalty, not magical compulsion." Seraphina was quiet for a long time, and I let her process, let her explore her own mind for the first time in who knows how long. Finally, she spoke. "My father needs to answer for what he's done, not just to me, but to dozens of she-wolves he's sold off like cattle over the years. If I stay, if I help you, can we ensure he faces justice?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Every alpha who's abused their authority, who's used command to override consent, who's treated their pack as property instead of people, they'll all answer for it." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll stay. Not for redemption or because I owe you, but because I want to see a world where what was done to us can't happen to others. That's all I ask." We left her chambers together, an unlikely alliance between the current Luna and the rejected one, and made our way to the throne room where my wolves had gathered everyone in the palace. Hundreds of them. Servants, guards, nobles, all pressed together in that grand space where I'd been destroyed 6 months earlier. Darius knelt on the floor before his throne, still in his sleeping clothes, silver chains glowing on his wrists and ankles. The mighty Alpha King, reduced to a prisoner in his own court. I walked through the crowd, and they parted before me like water, every eye fixed on my silver glowing form. When I reached the throne, I didn't sit in it. Instead, I shattered it with a gesture, reducing 500 years of Nightstorm dynasty to splinters and dust. "The old kingdom ends tonight," I announced, my voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "The reign of Alpha Kings who rule through force and fear is over. What rises from these ashes will be something new, something better." I turned to Darius, still kneeling in his chains. "Make your confession. Tell them what you did. All of it." He opened his mouth, and I could see him considering refusing, considering trying to maintain his pride. But then he looked at me, really looked at me, and saw something that made all resistance crumble. I fabricated charges against my true mate, Luna Aria Moonwhisper, he said, his voice breaking. She never betrayed me, never was unfaithful. I made it all up because I wanted to marry Seraphina Blackwood for political gain. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Wolves who'd believed his lies, who'd watched my humiliation with judgment, were now hearing the truth. I violated sacred mate bond laws by bonding with Seraphina before properly severing my connection with Aria. I used dark magic to force an artificial bond. And when Aria begged me not to cast her into the Forsaken Valley, when she pleaded for her life, I called her nothing and left her to die. He was crying now, shoulders shaking with sobs. I am guilty of every crime she's accused me of. I destroyed an innocent wolf for my own ambition, and I deserve whatever punishment the moon goddess sees fit to deliver. Silence fell over the throne room. Total, complete silence, as the weight of his confession settled over everyone present. Then, one by one, wolves began to kneel, not to him, to me, recognizing power and justice and divine authority when they saw it. I am not your new ruler, I said clearly. I'm not here to replace one tyrant with another. I'm here to break the system that creates tyrants in the first place. I raised my hands, and silver light exploded from my palms, washing over every wolf in the throne room. I could feel their pack bonds, the magical chains that tied them to Darius's authority, and I severed every single one simultaneously. The effect was immediate and profound. Hundreds of wolves gasped as they felt freedom for the first time, as the compulsions and commands that had controlled their lives simply vanished. Some wept. Others laughed in disbelief. A few collapsed from the shock of it. You're free now, I told them. Free to choose your own loyalty. Free to leave or stay. Free to build the kind of kingdom you want to live in. The choice is yours, and it will always be yours. I turned to Kira and Marcus, who'd entered the throne room with news of our complete victory. Spread the word to every territory Darius controlled. The Alpha King has fallen. The old system is broken. Anyone who wants freedom can come to Shadow Peak and receive it. Over the following weeks, the transformation was remarkable. Word spread across the north like wildfire. The rejected Luna had returned as a goddess and shattered the Alpha hierarchy. Wolves began arriving from across the region, some seeking freedom, others seeking to understand what was being built in Shadow Peak's ruins. Darius lived, as I'd promised, but he lived as a cautionary tale. His confession spread far and wide, his silver chains visible proof of divine judgment. Some wolves wanted him executed. I refused. Death would have made him a martyr. Living with the consequences of his cruelty was far more effective punishment. Seraphina proved to be an invaluable ally. She knew the inner workings of noble politics, knew which alphas were corrupt, and which genuinely wanted better for their packs. Together, we began the slow work of reformation, not through force, but through offering a better alternative. We established councils instead of single alphas. We outlawed forced mate bonds and pack commands that overrode consent. We created systems where power came from earned respect, rather than magical compulsion. It wasn't perfect. Change never is. But it was better, fairer, more humane. And through it all, I remained what the goddess had made me. A vessel for divine power. A symbol of what happened when you tried to destroy someone and only made them stronger. A reminder that cruelty always comes with a price. 6 months after I'd returned to Shadow Peak, I stood in the ruins of the old throne room. We'd never rebuilt it, preferring to let it remain as a memorial to what had been, and felt the goddess's presence one last time. You've done well, daughter, she said. Better than I hoped. You could have chosen pure vengeance, could have destroyed everything and everyone who'd hurt you. Instead, you chose justice, chose to build rather than just tear down. I learned from the best, I replied. You gave me power, but also wisdom, showed me that true strength isn't about domination. It's about lifting others up. What will you do now? She asked. Your work here is largely complete. The Reformation has begun. It will continue with or without you. I thought about that, about whether I wanted to stay and guide this new kingdom, or whether it was time to move on, to help other territories break free from Alpha tyranny. I think, I said slowly, that I'll wander for a while. Visit other regions. Offer the same choice I offered here, freedom or stagnation, justice or continued cruelty. Let them decide what kind of world they want to live in. The goddess laughed, warm and approving. The silver goddess walks among mortals once more. Be careful, daughter. You're going to become a legend. They'll tell stories about you for generations. Let them, I said, smiling. As long as those stories remind alphas everywhere that cruelty has consequences. That rejected Lunas don't always stay down. That sometimes, the wolf you try to destroy becomes the goddess who ends your reign. I took one last look at Shadow Peak, at the kingdom I'd transformed from tyranny to freedom, then turned toward the horizon. There were other territories out there, other corrupt alphas, other wolves suffering under unjust hierarchies, and now there was a silver goddess walking the earth, ready to offer them the same choice that had saved me, freedom or chains, justice or cruelty, a better world or the same old suffering. The choice was always theirs, but I'd be there to break the chains for anyone brave enough to choose freedom, because I was Arya Moonwhisper, the rejected Luna who returned as a silver goddess, and my work was just beginning. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey from rejected Luna to silver goddess, from victim to liberator, from broken mate to divine force of justice. Arya's story reminds us that sometimes the cruelest betrayals unlock strengths we never knew we had, and that true power comes not from dominating others, but from lifting them up. If this story resonated with you, if you felt the pain of betrayal and the triumph of transformation, if you believe that anyone who's been cast aside has the potential to rise again even stronger, we'd be honored to have you join the Alpha Destiny Tales family. Your support in helping us reach our first 1,000 subscribers means we can continue bringing you these powerful stories of resilience, redemption, and righteous justice. Remember, you are never as powerless as someone else wants you to believe. You are never as worthless as a cruel alpha claims. And sometimes, the worst thing someone can do to you becomes the catalyst for your greatest transformation. Stay strong, stay silver, and never let anyone make you forget your own divine power. Until next time, may the moon goddess watch over you, and may you find the courage to break whatever chains bind you.